I didn't expect a Monday morning to feel like a trap, but there I was, staring at a stack of spreadsheets that weren't mine and a sinking feeling in my chest. I could see it all too clearly, a mistake someone else had made, one that no one noticed yet, and somehow, without thinking, I had already covered for it. My name was quietly scribbled on the reports, my initials in tiny boxes where they shouldn't have been. It wasn't the first time I'd done something like this. I've always been the calm one, the one who absorbs the friction so the rest of the team doesn't have to. It's part of who I am, or at least, it was. But this morning, as I skimmed through the numbers, a cold realization started to creep in. I was the only one accountable if anyone noticed. And there were already murmurs in the office, subtle glances from my manager, the kind that lingered just long enough to make you question if they trusted you, or if they were looking for a reason not to. I paused at my desk and ran a hand over my face, half expecting someone to walk in and expose me. The irony hit me like a punch. I was protecting someone else, trying to keep the peace, and now the peace felt like a cage. I could almost hear the whisper of consequences brushing against the edges of the cubicle walls, waiting for the exact moment I'd let my guard down, and I did, because by the time lunch rolled around, I realized there was no escaping what had just started. Her name was Lena. She had this way of smiling like nothing in the world could touch her, and at first, it was contagious. New to the team, bright, ambitious, but a little scattered. Not in a careless way, exactly, more like she had 10 plates spinning and somehow expected them all to stay in the air. I was the guy who noticed when a plate wobbled. Usually, I nudged it back into place before anyone else even saw it. When Lena asked me to check a few numbers last quarter, I didn't think twice. It was small stuff, or so I thought. I liked being helpful, it's just how I roll. People notice when someone steps in, and I liked feeling like the invisible glue holding things together. Besides, she'd get embarrassed if she made a mistake in front of the team. So I covered for her. A missed email, a mislabeled file, a deadline almost gone, nothing huge, just enough to smooth things over. And it worked. For a while, the rest of the office liked Lena too. She had this energy that made the team feel alive during otherwise dull meetings. I, on the other hand, preferred corners and quiet. But with Lena, I ended up in her orbit. I started taking notes for her, reminding her of deadlines, quietly fixing things she missed, always under the radar. Everyone thought we were an efficient team, no one knew that efficiency came from me quietly shouldering extra weight, and I didn't mind. I told myself it was teamwork, that helping someone was kindness. The thought of confrontation, the idea of calling her out or letting her stumble, that felt worse than covering for her. But kindness has a funny way of mutating when it's constant. I just didn't realize it yet. By the middle of the quarter, I realized I didn't just cover for Lena out of politeness. It had become personal. Not in a romantic sense, at least not exactly, but in a way that tied my self-worth to her success. Every time I fixed one of her oversights, I felt a flicker of satisfaction, like I'd quietly prevented disaster. It made me feel needed, important, even if no one noticed. Some nights, I'd lie in bed replaying moments from the day. That time she forgot to send the report to our manager, and I stayed late to make sure it went out. Or the meeting where she misquoted numbers, and I subtly corrected her, letting the team think she had it under control. I told myself I was doing the right thing. That I was protecting her career and keeping the team afloat. But the more I helped, the more I started noticing the cost. My own tasks were piling up. My lunch breaks vanished. Even simple things, like catching up on emails or leaving work on time, felt impossible. Still, I kept going. Because each time I thought about saying no, I imagined her struggling, panicked, embarrassed in front of everyone. And I couldn't bring myself to do it. There was this strange mix of guilt and responsibility that twisted inside me, like I had become the silent partner in her life. Even now, I remember the little moments, her casual thanks, "I don't know what I'd do without you," her trusting look when I handed back corrected documents. Small gestures, but they hit me harder than they should have. I wanted to believe I was doing the right thing. I wanted to feel like I mattered, but sometimes, wanting to help someone is just enabling. And I was blind to that. It started with the little things. Emails that should have been simple confirmations suddenly came back with questions I didn't understand. Files I thought were finalized were slightly off, just enough to make me pause. At first, I assumed I had overlooked something. Maybe I was tired, or my notes weren't thorough enough. I had stayed late the night before, triple-checking every number for Lena, so maybe fatigue was creeping in, but then, during a routine team meeting, I noticed her shrugging off responsibilities she'd promised to handle. She'd speak confidently, even casually, while I silently caught the small errors she left behind. My stomach twisted every time I corrected something mid-discussion. The team didn't notice, at least not yet, but I did. And it was becoming exhausting to carry both our workloads without anyone realizing it. One afternoon, I found a spreadsheet on my desk with my initials all over it. Not in the "I did this for her" sense, more like someone else had signed it over to me without asking. My pulse spiked, and I stared at it for longer than I should have. Why hadn't she told me? Why hadn't anyone? I asked myself if I was imagining things, but deep down, I knew this wasn't just an oversight. That night, I replayed every interaction, every favor I'd done for Lena. Every missed deadline I covered. Every small lie I told to smooth things over. A nagging thought settled in: maybe kindness wasn't the same as loyalty. Maybe covering for someone else could have consequences. And maybe, just maybe, those consequences were about to start landing on my desk. I didn't know it yet, but the quiet unease I felt was only the beginning. What I thought was helping her was quietly becoming my responsibility, and I was about to find out just how far that could reach. By the time the next week rolled around, things had started unraveling, or at least, that's how it felt to me. Every small error Lena made seemed to land squarely on my desk. Emails that should have been sent went missing. Reports with minor miscalculations appeared out of nowhere. And somehow, every time a problem came up, I was the one being asked, "Can you fix this?" I started to notice the team's glances again. Subtle, almost imperceptible, but enough to make my stomach knot. They weren't questioning Lena, they were questioning me. And I realized that, in trying to protect her, I had positioned myself as the one who had to shoulder the fallout. Then came the big one. A client spreadsheet had been submitted with glaring errors. Lena seemed genuinely shocked, apologetic even. I offered to help, quietly fixing what I could before the client noticed. Later, in the break room, she whispered, "I'm so sorry. I don't know how this happened." I nodded, masking my irritation, telling myself it was just a mistake. Mistakes happen, I reminded myself, but the next day, I discovered something odd. Files I had thought were finalized were slightly different, adjusted after I had left for the night. At first, I assumed Lena had tried to fix them herself and failed. That made sense, right? She was careless, I was helpful, end of story. I even told a colleague, trying to offload some of the mental burden, "I think Lena's just overwhelmed. She's not used to this workload." They nodded, empathetic, and I felt a fleeting sense of relief. It felt like a small victory, until I realized relief had never lasted long in this office. Every solution I found seemed to only plant the next problem in my lap. I just didn't know yet how far the chain would stretch. Or who had really started it. I remember the exact moment everything snapped into focus. It was Friday afternoon, the office quiet except for the hum of the fluorescent lights. I had been double-checking a set of files one last time, trying to make sure nothing would slip through before the end-of-week deadline. That's when I noticed it, tiny, almost imperceptible changes in the formulas. Not mistakes. Deliberate. My chest tightened. I went back through every report I'd touched for Lena over the past 2 months. Every spreadsheet, every email, every mistake I had quietly corrected, it was all there, waiting for me. At first, I couldn't breathe. Had I imagined it? No, the timestamps didn't lie. She had been manipulating the data after I had fixed it. Every time I thought I was helping, I had been covering for someone who knew exactly what they were doing, and had been letting me take the blame for their own errors. I felt anger, disbelief, a sick kind of betrayal. And then proof. Emails she had sent to herself, carefully crafted, making it look like I had overlooked critical details. Copies of spreadsheets with her notes tucked in the margins, all pointing to the same conclusion: she had been using my diligence against me. I wanted to confront her immediately, but my hands shook too much. Instead, I saved the evidence, filed it away, and walked out of the office feeling every ounce of frustration I had suppressed over the past 2 months. Every late night, every missed lunch, every lie I had told to smooth over her mistakes, it all hit me at once: the person I had tried to protect wasn't just careless. They had knowingly let me carry their burden, and worse, had done it in a way that no one else would notice until it was too late, and for the first time in weeks, I realized, kindness isn't the same as consent. The days after I discovered the truth were strange. The office felt smaller, colder, like I could see every corner differently. Lena acted as if nothing had happened, smiling, chatting casually, checking off tasks, but I couldn't trust her anymore. Every word, every gesture felt calculated, as though I had been naive to assume otherwise. I started keeping my distance, submitting work directly, documenting everything, triple-checking my own files before anyone else even touched them. I had to protect myself now. It was exhausting, but there was a small, quiet relief in reclaiming control. No more bending over backward to cover for someone who wouldn't even acknowledge the weight they placed on me. The team never realized the full story, and part of me was glad. I didn't need their pity, and I certainly didn't want anyone to feel sorry for me. What hurt more than embarrassment was knowing that I had willingly allowed this to happen because I thought I was being kind. Every time I had helped Lena, I had signed a contract of silent consent, without realizing it. Even Lena herself never admitted it. I never confronted her directly. There was no dramatic fallout, no explosive conversation. Just the quiet, heavy understanding that my goodwill had been taken for granted, and that the only person I could rely on in that situation was myself. Some nights, I still replay the moments in my head, asking myself if I could have seen it sooner. If I should have drawn a line earlier. But deep down, I know the lesson isn't about blame. It's about boundaries. About understanding that kindness, when misplaced, can become a liability. And that protecting someone else doesn't have to come at the expense of your own peace. I had paid the price for too long. Now, I had to learn to value myself first. Even now, months later, I walk past the office building and feel a strange weight in my chest. Lena has moved on, of course, promoted, recognized, probably charming the next person into covering for her. And me? I've learned to set boundaries, to say no without guilt, but the memory lingers. The oddest part is the moral residue that sticks with you. Part of me still wonders if I could have handled it differently, confronted her sooner, demanded accountability, but another part knows the truth: kindness alone can't protect someone from themselves. Sometimes, trying to shield someone from consequences is just giving them permission to keep hurting you. I talk to friends about it occasionally. But their advice never feels enough. Just let it go, they say. But letting it go doesn't erase the quiet evenings I spent double-checking her mistakes, the stress, the feeling of betrayal that clung to me like a second skin. It doesn't erase the realization that what I thought was helping had actually been consent to let my goodwill be used against me. The lesson is simple, but it's hard to live by. Enabling isn't kindness. Protecting someone doesn't always mean helping them. And sometimes the hardest part isn't recognizing the betrayal, it's accepting that you let it happen. I still think about it often, and I still struggle with the impulse to help when I see someone faltering. But now, before I step in, I ask myself one question: am I really helping, or am I just signing up to pay the price later? And I don't have an answer that feels final.